Tommy Rex, and you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now, here's your host.
Incarceration, America's rock, metal, and tattoo festival returns this summer with Limp Bizkit, Disturbed, Bad Omens, plus Gojira, Papa Roach, A Day to Remember, Motionless in White, Ice Nine Kills, Cypress Hill, The Used, and so many more. Incarceration at the Ohio State Reformatory, July 17th to 19th. Passes on sale now at incarceration.com.
What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle, and already been chopping it up a little bit before we jumped on here, but looking forward to the conversation about to have with Andrew from the band Remember the Monsters. What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, looking forward to this conversation. Like I was saying, man, really digging your guys' stuff. But usually when I have people on for the first time, I like going like way back. So when you were like little Andrew, you remember what you originally wanted to be when you grew up?
So yeah, actually, much to my mother's dismay, I remember, I grew up in a pretty small conservative, like Christian town, and my parents were no exception there. So I remember finding an MXPX CD in like a local Christian bookstore. And, there was a picture of Mike Herrera on the cover with sleeve tattoos and all that. I was probably 8 years old and starting to get into like punk rock and metal and stuff. And I remember running up to my mom with the CD and being like, I'm going to look like this one day. And she's like, over my dead body. Well, she's still alive and we're good friends, but I did stay true to that. So I think I knew really early on that, music was always enticing to me. And, I went through different styles of music, like played in like pop punk and metal bands and metalcore and kind of everything in between. So it's been a little bit of a journey since then.
Nice. And I mean, you mentioned kind of like the upbringing and like, finding that MXPX CD, but like around the house, when you were first exposed to music, who were like some of the earliest artists you remember hearing?
So I kind of really started my exposure to, I would say, the rock genre on my own, and probably in middle school through like a close friend that kind of introduced me to a lot of stuff. And, back then it was like early 90s, like industrial. So I listened to like a lot of Circle of Dust and like Clank and stuff like that. Again, I was kind of coming from the Christian scene, so I was listening to like Living Sacrifice and like Underoath, early stuff like that. But I kind of branched into more mainstream stuff and started listening. I think I discovered Metallica in middle school. Stuff like that. So even early 2000s, like Slipknot, System of a Down, like Orgy, Rammstein. Those were all like really early influences and stuff like that. And so we'll probably talk about this later with the newer stuff that's been coming out. But yeah, getting to work with Jay Gordon from Orgy was like a 25-year dream come true.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into that. When you first started actually performing and like chasing this dream, what was what were some of the where you grew up at? What were some like the local venues and what was like the scene like?
So I left West Michigan in like the early 2000s, but during that time is kind of where my grassroots stuff started and some of my first bands played. And so there was this really cool club called Skeletones that doesn't exist any longer, but it was like a perfect small club size venue. And that's where bands like Still Remains and like my old band Taste Slayer, Who Dies came up. It was an interesting scene. It was like Pop Evil was from Grand Rapids. They were kind of a smaller band at the time. It was like way before they broke through in radio. There was kind of a cool, interesting scene. It was like a lot of indie, a lot of metal. there's a lot of great metal bands from Michigan in general. Like, one of Close to Home's first tours was with We Came as Romans, and like those guys are good friends from Detroit. So like I'd say like parts of the Michigan music scene have kind of stuck with me over the years. Still kept a lot of those connections to old friends.
Nice. And then when did Remember the Monsters? Was this your first, or when did you first start actually performing out live? And who was that with?
My first like band that probably went on the road a little bit was Taste So Your Hero Dies, and like we had got picked up by Revelation Records with like Himza and Civ and stuff back in the day, and distributed some stuff in Europe. And then I started another band. I was in a couple of bands, the Eventide, which played like a little bit of Warped Tour and stuff like that. They were based out of the Bay Area. I was with them, and that band kind of dissolved, and I got the opportunity to join Close to Home, which was on Artery and Razor and Tie Records. So that took us pretty extensive touring multiple countries. We even had like the theme song for the Winter Olympics in Sochi back in like 2014, I think it was.
Nice. So
that was pretty extensive touring. We got to work with some cool producers. We worked with like Tom Denny from A Day to Remember and Andrew Wade. That band was kind of a little bit of that mashup of like pop punk and hardcore. I guess people used to call it easycore, but I feel like that genre doesn't exist anymore.
And then when did Remember the Monsters come together for you?
So after Close to Home, I started a solo project that was kind of in my answer to like using the rest of the music I'd been writing with our guitar player for what had been intended for Close to Home. At that point, I took on playing guitar and singing with the band instead of just singing. So I did the actual Villains project from like 2015 to about 2020. And Remember the Monsters were already out. They had came out, I think, with their first single around 2019. And originally they had a guy named Julian who went on to start a band called Loveless. If you're familiar, they had some pretty big success. So after Julian left, they were kind of looking for a singer for a while. I was doing my solo project, and through a mutual friend that was managing them, he connected me with them, and they're based here in Arizona, where I've been living for the last 10 years. So, and to be honest with you, I wasn't that interested in it at first. Things were going well with me on the solo project. We were hitting kind of the same numbers at the time as they were. And I was like, why join a band? But I missed the camaraderie. I missed the group feeling, like working with a team. And as I got to know the guys and gave them a chance, I really, I fell in love with their personalities and them as people. So it started to click and make sense. So it started really slow. We probably did like one song for like the first year or two. And since then, we've just been head down writing like crazy. So I think we have like, I probably should do my own research here, but I think we have like 17 songs out now. Something like that, 15 songs maybe. I lose track, but we've been writing so much lately that we have our entire second record basically done. And the third record's already written, just not recorded. So
nice.
We've been kind of on a
and I'm always curious about band names. Did they share with you like what inspired Remember the Monsters?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story, and actually, like, I assumed it was one thing and it wasn't. So I had this conversation with our guitar player because he started this band when he was in like, conceptually, he started the band when he was in like high school. It didn't really take root or do anything serious for quite a while after that. But he'd come up with the name just while he was trying to think of memorable, fun names. And I think he was living with Cameron Mizell, the producer at the time, and like helping co-write with a lot of bands and stuff. And so I think it was just a random inspiration. It was just a random idea. But ironically enough, and this is years after the name was already established, the TV show Dexter, which I just happen to love, ended their season or series. The last episode of the original series was called Remember the Monsters, which is really just a strange coincidence, but I still love that tie-in. Like, if it was up to me and it was my story, I'd probably tell people it was related to that, but it's not. It's just really cool to have that association, so I'll take it.
Yeah. No, I was a big fan of that series as well. I didn't even put that together. I'm much older than you, so I right away think of like Godzilla movies and stuff when I, like Destroy All Monsters or something. So I thought maybe might have been inspired from those old movies or something.
Well, I think to some degree it's more about just like the dark side of human nature, right? It's like the people who hurt you, the people that do wrong to you, like you always remember the monsters. It's like,
yeah.
I think to me at least that's kind of what I've taken on the meaning, and I think that's something that's kind of thematically in the music itself and the lyrics and stuff.
Yeah, and then so when you came on board and we were talking before we went on the air, like, what was something that it was a huge inspiration to me, or inspiration for, what I really enjoyed was the homage to John Carpenter's They Live in your music video for the single Infected. You want to talk a little bit about like the inspiration behind that song, first of all, and then we could talk more about the music video as well?
Yeah, so the way that music video came together was actually kind of funny. So we did kind of intended that song to be intentionally kind of really driving and fast and heavy, touching more into the metalcore side. And we actually co-wrote that with Ben Bruce from Asking Alexandria. And so there's a little bit of that early Asking feel to it, that more driving, like fast paced, like double kick rhythms and stuff like that. The inspiration for me on the lyrics was really about like kind of an observation of the kind of the turmoil, kind of the temperature of our environment right now. And it was really about like the distrust and in media and leaderships and politics and things like that. And just kind of this idea that like a lot of politicians are two-faced and self-serving, or at least untrustworthy. I think we were trying to capture that feel. And, so it's kind of funny. The music video, we actually had scheduled with our videographer just to go to this like studio. It's like a movie studio here in Phoenix that people use for all kinds of video stuff. And we intended to go there just to do like some social media clips, like, quick little 1-minute videos for TikTok and stuff, to do features. And few days beforehand, I had a random inspiration, thinking about John Carpenter's They Live. And, when I was little, I used to love like WWE wrestling and stuff like that. And so seeing like Roddy Piper in a movie was really cool. But then, on top of that, the storyline kind of stuck with me, the visuals of like the black and white, like the billboards, the subliminal messaging and stuff like that. And it just all felt so relevant to the message of the song, which is kind of about like having your thoughts chosen for you, kind of being really us under the influence of, mainstream media and things like that. So we tried to capture as many of those elements to tell that story in a way that like didn't feel like a parody. It just wanted to like take certain shots and elements of it that would kind of give you the idea. So I'm really glad that you actually picked up on that theme. I think the masks kind of give it away. But it was our interpretation of like what that means for, our video, and telling it in a way that we thought like John Carpenter would have if it was in that world.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the mask definitely, gave it away at the end, but I caught on right at the get when, had the same almost like flannel shirt on as Roddy Piper. And then they come out, you're outside, they coming out of the church or whatever, you go in, and as soon as the glasses, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not seeing things. I know where we're going with this,
Get those references, like I kind of tried to break down just a few of the key elements that kind of, would tell you that it's They Live. And actually our masks we hand painted. Those were all actually my daughter helped me make those. So, that was kind of fun. We were basically like putting those on still wet, painting them that day. It was like super last minute. I picked up the outfit at a thrift store after kind of watching the movie again and trying to figure out and taking notes like, how do I look like Roddy Piper? I bought like a brown leather jacket because that first scene he walks in with like a backpack on and all that.
Yeah. Yep.
I was trying to get as close to the authenticity as possible while probably planning that whole shoot. I wrote the whole treatment, sent it to our videographer probably 3 days before we actually shot it. And I gave him a whole list of like shot for shot, like what I wanted to see and everything. So and he's a big film buff. He loves John Carpenter films and stuff. So he was like super on board. You know, when I gave him the concept, he was like, "Oh, we're gonna have fun with this." So, you know, and actually we've talked about potentially, now this isn't in the works yet, but we had talked about doing a follow-up video for like another song and then continuing that storyline. Because
Nice.
to the movie, like, you know, we didn't really quite get to the parts of like them kind of taking back control. And so if the right song comes around for us to do that with, like, there's the potential, I think we expand that universe a little further.
Nice. Yeah, like I said, I caught on right away when from the beginning of the music video, and as we were saying, it's almost, you know, it's a very prophetic film for the climate that we do live in today, like you were saying, and with everything kind of already looking like it's gearing towards like pandemic 2.0, you know, I'm catching a lot of how the media steers fear, you know, like you were saying, like the media, you know, I'm going back to professional wrestling. I'm a huge professional wrestling fan as well. You know, grew up on Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan, all that stuff. But I think that's like what politics is today. It's just like, you know, you got your one guy that you cheer, you got your other side that you boo, but they all both go to the same locker room and get paid by the same corporate entity, you know? Yeah, at the end of the day, that's what we're dealing with. And I love, I mean, for the newer fans that might not be familiar with that film and that concept, I love when artists send a message like that to get people thinking, you know. It seems like critical thinking is something that's like very rare anymore these days. And when we're in a fear state, we it's easier to let people do our thinking for us, you know, almost. And, you know, when we stay in that, like that centered, it's easier for what they don't want, you know, they don't want us all seeing clearly, coming together, united as one people, you know? But I don't want to become the Alex Jones show or anything with you.
It brings a quote to mind, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it basically said something like, it was one of the founding fathers. It said something like, if you trade liberty for safety or security, like, you don't deserve either.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's something that kind of resonates with me too, is to say, you know, people are so quick to abandon, you know, what they know is best for themselves because of fear. And I feel like that fear is driven through a lot of, I don't even want to say misinformation. It might even be true, but it's just like the way that it's sensationalized and like used to kind of manipulate the way people act and spend and live. And like, you know, it's like if you turn off the news and just walk around and talk to people, you see the world's not that bad. Like, most people are pretty great. You know, most people are intending to do good in this world. Like, if you fill your head with constant negativity and only look at things through the lens of what's wrong, then like that's all you're going to see.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And just the whole like you're saying, you know, we've been hit with so much, like bombarded, that it's almost like when the aliens do arrive, we're all going to be like, you know, it's like
White House just do stuff today.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, I don't know, man, but got to keep rocking, like you said. You're supporting, you're keeping. We got to, what brings people together. You know, we got so much that tears us apart, but I think music in general is used as something we all can unite under. You know, and always great that.
Not only does it help us kind of express and feel our emotions, but like when you get a group of people together in like a concert hall, like there's a palpable feeling of connection, you know, that back and forth, the give and take between the artists and the fans. And like, you know, if we can get the aliens involved, that's a whole new market, you know. Instead of being the biggest artist on earth, we could try to be the biggest artist in the universe. So I welcome that.
Yeah, exactly. I was remembering back when, you know, after like around 2020, when, you know, we couldn't go to shows, we couldn't go anywhere, and how easy it was for people that I've had lifelong friendships and relationships with to disagree on a topic on social media and like kind of get like split and think, how are we ever going to solve this? It was like almost got, I mean, it got pretty brutal with, I don't know, in my life with certain family members and stuff. And then our friends, that lifelong friends in the music world. And then when the concerts started opening back up and I went to my first music festival after, it was just like all that stuff was forgotten and we were all there, brought back together and remembering what brought us together. So it's like you said, people need to get out more and talk to their neighbor instead of, you know, be living in fear. They want us at home. They want us stuck at home. They want us behind a keyboard. They don't want us interacting on a human level. They almost want us hostage, which let's get into that single.
Well, quick, actually, if I could, while we're on that topic of COVID, you know, we released a single called System Override right around the time we did Infected last year. And, you know, I wrote that song actually and recorded it during COVID. And that was a huge inspiration for that song, was this divisive nature of people on both sides of the fence just completely losing sight of the goal and just fighting with each other. You know, it was kind of a call to unity and to look past those things. So, and going back to, you know, early influences of music, one of the very first concerts I ever went to was the Family Values Tour, which was like Korn, Limp Bizkit, Rammstein, Ice Cube, and Orgy. And Orgy was the opener. It was one of the first bands and the first concerts I ever saw, and I was blown away by their theatrical performance, the music. And, you know, like I said, I liked industrial, I liked metal. They were kind of this poppy mashup of both. And I thought, man, this is one of the coolest bands ever. And I've been a fan since the late 90s. And I sat on that track for years, not really knowing what to do with it. It was written before I joined or really started doing much with Remember the Monsters. And so I had that song in my back pocket, and through a roundabout long story, my old guitar player and producer ended up working with Orgy, and he showed this. He told me, he's like, hey, of all people, you'll appreciate this more than anyone. He's like, I'm working with Jay Gordon. And I was like, show him my song. And I was like, ask him to get on it. And then I was kind of half joking, you know, I was like, there's no way this guy who's played arenas or whatever is going to like jump on a song with my DIY band, you know, and he just loved the song and loved the meaning and loved he was attached to it. So he immediately agreed to do it. And man, I about crapped my pants. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Before we get into Hostage, I just wanted to nod to that. I think, you know, that was
no, for sure. That's amazing.
In my career that I was like, everything else could go wrong from here on out. And I could just like, I'll die happy knowing that I accomplished something like that.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's incredible. I'm glad you went back there. It's something, you know, especially, you know, with a message during that time, you know, something positive grew from you trying to unite, you know, with a message to unite everybody, you know. It's like the universe was giving you a hookup for doing something positive, putting positivity out and a lot of negativity during that time, you know.
Right. Like I said, I sat on that song for years and I didn't really know what to do with it. And then when that opportunity came around, it was like, this is a no-brainer. Now's the time, you know. And it was actually, it was right around the time of like the Charlie Kirk assassination. And like, no matter what side of the fence you feel on that, it just was a similar atmosphere. You know, it was that same, everyone's got a strong opinion. Everyone's on one side or the other. And, you know, the song isn't pro or for either side. It's just pointing out the lunacy of this, you know, this constant battle that we choose to have with each other over issues that are somewhat, you know, not our issues to be upset over.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, how do we get so far where a father, you know, a son, a husband was murdered in front of everybody, and we're like, you know, there's a side that would cheer that? You know, I think that'd be something that we'd all should bring us all together, you know, in compassion.
Indication of like the manipulation and like the fact that like the media is empowering people to have these really kind of offensive opinions. So it's like, I think no matter how you feel about the person, people should be upset over the fact that like a man was killed over free speech, you know. Yeah. Like whether you like, you know, whether someone likes what I'm saying or what he's saying, what anyone's saying, like there's a general level of respect and understanding. And like, it's more important to have the conversation in an intelligent and meaningful way than to just silence voices you are opposed to. And, you know, I think that's such a slippery slope that, you know, we're kind of hacking away at our own First Amendment, our own rights, just by, you know, not allowing ourselves to be open-minded enough to have conversations and attempt to learn from each other. And look, you're not going to change everyone's opinions, and that's not the point. You don't need to. You know, the point is healthy discourse from two sides of the fence without, you know, inciting violence on each other.
Exactly. I know for me, I'm retired Navy, and I during that, like I mentioned, during that time frame, it was just like, I'm like, wow, this is how you truly feel. You know, when people get behind a keyboard and we're not interacting as humans, you know, I mean, it's almost like sometimes like you're more comfortable to to take the mask off and be who you like really are. And I was being exposed to so much that I didn't agree with, but at the same time, it's like, it was, I sat back and was like, hey man, this is, I served for everybody to have a voice or a seat at the table. You know, I don't have to like what you're saying. Some of what people say, I could find hurtful, but it's still their right to say it. And I would never shut anybody down, but I would always run into, like, if I were to say something that people didn't like, instead of scrolling past like I try and do, or unfollow because I value the friendship more, man, it was just like, you know, pile on. It was crazy, you know?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for your service. You know, I think it's not even necessarily like it's the real nature or real side of people. I think sometimes it's like people feel emboldened, you know, on the keyboard because they know there's no consequence. Like, you know, if you walked up to somebody and said something blatantly offensive to their face, there's always the chance they're going to smack you. And, you know, like, you might be more choosy with your words if you think there's an actual consequence. But I think everyone feels safe in, you know, in their own bedroom, in their own office, whatever, typing away and, you know, tearing each other down because there is no consequence. You know, it's kind of like a lack of inhibition. Like when people are drunk, they just make, you know, bad decisions because they're not thinking it through. And I think, you know, it's easy to get into that slippery slope. And the scary thing is, like you said, when you unfollow every, you know, dissenting voice, every person that disagrees with you, what you're doing is you're training your algorithm to just only show you what you already believe. And if you never are willing to challenge your beliefs and everything in your world is an echo chamber, it really creates a sense of ignorance where everyone feels so justified and so right in their opinion because all they see is things that support their opinion.
Yeah.
Willing to see anything that would challenge or change their opinion. So, you know, that sort of mental flexibility, that ability for people to challenge and you know, have conversations seems to be slipping, and it's kind of a scary thing. And so to some degree, I think, you know, some of the message of some of the songs I've written recently have been kind of talking about how scary that it is for us, you know, where that's leading the world today.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like people, when, like you said, when they're in that echo chamber, they become a little jaded, you know, another segue into a single ears. Let's talk a little bit about the message with that song.
Yeah, I mean, jaded's kind of more relational. I think, you know, it was just kind of inspired by just more of a heartache tune. I think, you know. It's interesting. So, I mean, I went through a pretty rough divorce last year, and so there's a lot of my personal journey in a lot of these songs, and in a lot of the ones that are coming out soon. You know, there's a bit of that, you know, the different stages of grief, you know, the anger, the frustration, the denial, the, you know, the sadness, like all the different things you go through. I think every song to some degree that is about that, I think tells kind of and it's not like a concept album per se, you know what I mean? But I think there's a lot of times where I'm trying to really focus on the emotional weight of what I was going through instead of more of like a storytelling. And the reason I try to write that way is I think we all feel emotions. We all have our own story. And if I can try to capture the emotion of what I'm feeling at that time and stay somewhat ambiguous about the storytelling, I think it leaves room for interpretation. It leaves room for people to add their own version of the story. And so I'm always a little cautious to say like what the story of the song is, because what it means to me is not what it means to everyone else. And I think that's kind of the beauty of music, is it's very healing because you can see yourself in that emotion and in that experience. And, you know, when I toured a lot with Close to Home, that was something I tried to write, like more positive music. And people would come up to me and tell me their stories about how, you know, a certain song helped them, you know, come out to their parents or whatever it may be, you know, embolden them to do a certain thing. And I was like, well, that wasn't what I was thinking when I wrote that song at all. But I'm also really happy that that's what they were able to do with it. You know, they were able to take that and give them strength or clarity or, you know, the bravery to face certain things. And so it's not about me. Like, I don't try to write from like a storyteller perspective. I think I just try to capture any intense emotion that I'm feeling based on my own situations, and then trying to put that feeling into the music.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I do connect with that. I've always been a lyric person myself, you know, it's like I always, and the same thing. It's like, if I can relate on some sort of level, like, and it might not have been the message that you were intentionally setting out, but it's like, how is it affecting me right now? And if it makes me feel or makes me, you know, almost want to do something better, you know, that's the beauty. That's the power of music, and the language of the heart usually is spoken and received through the heart, you know?
Right. And, you know, there's a loose inspiration behind that song. It's not as clear in like the little social media video we've done yet. If we do a full video for it, which is yet to be decided, I kind of like the concept of doing like a Edgar Allan Poe, like Telltale Heart story. And if you notice in the verses, like the first verse ends with a line that says, "Dead hearts still beat." And then the drum beat changes to a heartbeat. It goes, you know, the kick drum mimics heartbeat after that. So obviously that was intentional, you know, as we were writing the song. I really liked that first verse. It used to be the second verse of the song, and I actually switched it around because I was like, I just want people to get to this immediately. You know, I thought that kind of hook of like the "I die every night" was kind of the best way to get people's attention right off the first line of the song and keep them hopefully sticking around to see what the rest of it's about. But yeah, that song took some last minute rearrangements and some intentional moves to kind of help that storytelling. But that was kind of the visual inspiration, if you will, was kind of taking my situation. And it's like, there's a video of me being like buried alive, singing the song. And, you know, I intended for that to be just kind of like cuts from the music video as we expand it.
Nice. Now, you mentioned that the album War of Attrition is not a concept album, but what was the, like, I guess, inspiration for that, choosing that title?
Again, that was kind of tied to the relational stuff I was going through. So like, War of Attrition is kind of breaking someone down through like constant losses. And, you know, I had just kind of come out of a place of healing from a very broken time. And I think as I was thinking back to like all the little battles, all the fights, all the arguments, all the things that just kind of broke me down before I was able to rebuild, it just kind of seemed like a good metaphor for that, especially because a lot of that, you know, messaging, those feelings were kind of infused into a lot of those songs.
Gotcha. And that's out now for fans if they want to, you know, check out and support the entire album. Now, I know there was some like going back to some older songs to throw on this as well. And I'm always curious about why people pick certain covers, you know, to remaster. So you want to tell me a little bit about like Who's Afraid of Little Old Me and doing the Taylor Swift cover there?
And my daughter will kill me for saying this because she's like a total metalhead and punk girl now. But, you know, a couple years ago, she was still a very, very big Taylor Swift fan. And we were kind of sitting at home and she was like, there's a midnight premiere for a new album. You know, we have to have like a little listening party. So, you know, we're on the West Coast. So midnight was 9 p.m. for us. And I was like, all right, you know, I was like, we stay up a little bit, like sit here and listen to the record. And as we're getting into the album, you know, we're listening track to track to track. And as soon as I heard the first like few lines of Who's Afraid of Little of Me, I immediately called my guitar player and I was like, dude, we've got to do this song. I was like, it is cool, kind of dark feel. And I was like, it just feels like it's begging for something heavier. Like I could picture in my head immediately, I could hear, you know, drums, guitars, like a more full band production, because the song itself from Taylor Swift is quite, how do I put it, like kind of empty, like musically. There's not a lot. It's like more vocal driven. There's not a lot happening musically. And I was like, I could imagine this with our feel attached to it being like a really cool, impactful song. And so, yeah, it was mostly the lyrics and kind of the melodies that drew me in. And I pictured like, you know, when she gets into those, like, Who's Afraid, when she gets to like the higher notes, like, I was like, that's a good register for me to get that gritty, like more intense tone out of my voice. And so I don't think, we didn't even change the key. We sped it up a little bit. And we chopped a really dragging bridge out of it to shorten the song a little bit. But other than that, you know, we just tried to essentially write it the way we heard it. You know, I think there was an instant vision for that song, and it became this like race to like be the first to get it out, because it's like, and no offense to Our Last Night, I've known these guys for like 15 years. I used to tour crossovers with them and stuff like that, and done festivals with them. But those fucking guys, they cover everything and they beat everyone to it because they have their own studio. And like, it's just like a week after any song comes out, they've put their version out. And if you do it, everyone's like, oh, Our Last Night already did it. And I'm like, covers for everyone, because, you know, they do everything. They don't leave any crumbs. They don't leave any music for anybody else to do. So it kind of became a joke of like, we have to get this out before Our Last Night does. Again, I'm not picking on them. They're nice guys. But they've sort of created a niche that it kind of gobbles up all the top songs immediately. It doesn't leave much for anybody else to do.
That's hilarious. Well, hey, you know, good to hear that your daughter is now a metalhead too. There's hope, man. I'm a girl dad as well. And, you know, they're starting to come along. They're starting to finally come along, other than raised on like Jonas Brothers and Hannah Montana and stuff, you know.
This new generation is way cooler than I ever gave them credit for. Like my daughter and her friends, you know, they were talking about music, and she brought up MSI, and I was like, did you say MSI? I was like, Mindless Self-Indulgence? She's like, yeah, I love them. And I was like, how the hell do you know them? That was cool. You know, it's just like wanting to go to an ICP show. And I was like, how is this still relevant? You know, these kids are 14 years old and they're talking about bands that were big when I was 13, 14 years old, you know. And I'm like, it's kind of crazy, but it just shows like the accessibility of music, and like, and if something is good, it's good for generations. You know, I think that's what we should all aspire to do with music, is make something meaningful that can last.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you mentioned that too, because I've heard it from some of my friends that are in very popular bands from the 90s, how like TikTok has given them a new wave of fans, young kids coming and experiencing the 90s now, you know, 90s rock.
Even like Creed saw like a huge uptick in their concert sales and stuff like that, and their streaming numbers, because it just was popularized through modern social media. So I mean, you know, stuff like that can be really cool. I appreciate social media for its exposure. I will say, as a musician, sometimes I wish I was born into a different era, because I don't really care for social media. Like, I don't like putting myself out there, and it's unfortunately like something you have to do. You know, it's like, you think like, oh, I'll get signed to a record label and then I don't have to do this anymore. But like, no, they're going to double down and tell you to do it twice as much. You know, it's like, I'm not always comfortable walking around with like my phone in my face, you know, lip syncing our songs to a GoPro or whatever. And, you know, unfortunately that's 90% of what TikTok is now. It's like doing like a trending dance while you know, sing your song. And it just kind of feels like a dancing monkey to me. I'm like, you know,
Yeah.
not really it's not that I like worry about what other people think. I know it's not like I'm afraid to do it. It's just, it just feels so corny to me.
No, I'm with you 100%, man. I'm old school. I started, you know, I was a local concert promoter here in Cleveland back in the day, where we would cut out the band logo, take it up to Kinko's, make a flyer, you know, post the flyers for the show and the date and the location and all that stuff on, you know, drop them off at Record Exchange, and, you know, actually hustle to get people to show up at shows. And now it's just like, oh, they said yes on Facebook. Well, 9 times out of 10, those yeses are just like, yeah, they were cool at the time, but, you know,
they're not really showing.
Yeah, exactly.
Peabody, by the way, that was always you know, a staple of the Cleveland music scene.
Oh yeah. Peabody's was like a second home for me. They did my when I went on my last deployment, they did a going away party for me there, and then a welcome home party when I came back. You know, it was amazing times that I barely remember, but I'm 17 years sober now, so
Ohio will do that to you, though. You know, I mean, I probably drank more than I ever have in my life in the 3 years that I lived in Ohio.
yeah. Cleveland especially has that effect, man. No, but what was that?
It's no different in Cincinnati.
Yeah. And then you guys worked with producer Matt Good. You know, what was that experience like for you?
So we've been working with him, mostly him, for quite a while now. We do occasionally work with my friend Hiram Hernandez as well. Like, he did System Override. He's currently working on 2 more songs for us that we did last weekend out in LA. But yeah, 90% of what we do is with Matt Good. And, you know, some of that, it's a few different factors. So, I mean, for one, Matt is undeniably an incredible metal producer. You know, he's worked with dozens of artists, you know, some of the more notable ones like Asking Alexandria, Gemini Syndrome, Memphis May Fire, Sleeping with Sirens, Hollywood Undead. And, you know, he's worked with my friends Nerve, and just a lot of really great stuff. And his production is amazing. So really fun to work with him. He's based here in Arizona. In fact, he lives about 15 minutes from me. So there's the awesome convenience factor of just being able to drop in and do sessions whenever, you know, not needing to like worry about travel and all that. So, you know, there's that. And then our guitar player, Ashten, who's the founder of the band, has been really, really good friends with Matt for a long time, many years. And so they've had a great, like, working relationship, friend relationship. And, you know, so a lot of good reasons to work with him. You know, he sang and played guitar in the band From First to Last as well, which, you know, they were kind of, I would say, kind of a benchmark band for like the screamo scene. You know, they were kind of really impactful. And of course, Sonny Moore went on to become Skrillex and became one of the more impactful like EDM artists as well. So, you know, there's kind of a cool history. And I actually just learned the other day that Wes Borland from Limp Bizkit used to be in From First to Last. As well as the Larson. So, you know, it was kind of a super group, like, and, you know, Matt is just an incredibly talented singer, songwriter, producer. So, you know, we try to come to him with relatively finished songs, but he always adds something really cool to it, you know, whether it be, you know, some uncredited harmonies or things like that. You'll actually probably hear his voice stacked with mine in a couple songs. But yeah, I mean, his production is great, and he's legitimately like one of the fastest moving producers I've ever seen. The guy's like,
nice. Now with the album being out now, has there been like I haven't checked, but you guys got any tours or anything planned to support the album?
Not at the moment. And, part of that is like the guitar player and I do most of the writing and recording. And we have a full band of members. But, Ashten, our former member, also plays in a band on Fearless Records called Minute After Midnight. And so between our really busy recording schedule, him helping write and record with Minute After Midnight, our drummer, Elias, lives in LA. He's originally from Arizona as well, but he plays live and studio drums for the band Filter. He's the live drummer for Kesha and Noah Cyrus and a bunch of other artists. So he's a road dog, and he's pretty much constantly on the road. So for us to start setting things up would be working around his schedule and coordinating, or finding a fill-in or something like that. So no, that hasn't been a huge priority for us. I think right now it's about building, exposing ourselves to new listeners, finding that demand so that when we do kind of start playing out again, we can kind of guarantee a better attendance and a more engaged audience. So that's been a big thing. We're trying to build our socials. We're trying to be more engaged, and also just like, I'm old school like you. I remember the days of like flyering outside of shows. And I still think that's probably one of the most effective marketing techniques. And so if you're in a band at home and trying to figure out how to grow your scene, don't forget the tried and true things. I got to concerts either before or after, and I hit the line of people handing out stickers and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, like you said, with the Facebook invites and stuff, like, you can get 1,000 clicks, or 1 million plays. It doesn't mean 1 million people are going to show up to watch you play. It's like,
Yeah,
this distinctive crowd. There are certain people, and God bless them, that go to concerts all the time, right? It's part of their lifestyle. Like, I've been to like 5 or 6 concerts already this year. So that's like more than one a month, right? I'm a concert goer, and there are people like me that, appreciate and love live music, that they go all the time. Those are the people we really want to reach and engage with, because people, whether they love you or hate you on Facebook or TikTok, like, if they're not out there showing up to your shows, buying merch, like engaging with you in a real meaningful way, like, I'd rather have one of those fans for every 1,000 TikTok fans. It's just such a big difference. And I think you're going to find those people at shows. And so, whether it be playing them or promoting at them, I think it's important to be in the scene, to be involved, to be seen, in your local market, to build grassroots followings that can expand outward. And, so that's the kind of stuff we're focusing on right now. And like I said, we are just finishing up our 11th song for the second album. So we've recorded an entire album worth of new music you haven't heard at all yet. And on top of that, we've written the third record pretty much. I think we're at nine more demos that we need to record for a third album. So we're just cruising ahead. And I think part of that goal is, getting to the point where we're ready to pair up with a label again, and then having something in the pipeline already ready where we can like sell a record or two to the label, kind of fulfill the contract immediately with the timeline.
yeah,
we're thinking long term. We're thinking about the next couple of years worth of releases, and really trying to spend the next year building. And, ideally, and we're not trying to skip the local scene, but the way that we're laid out and kind of all over the place and spread out, we kind of want to get to a point where we start opening some tours with some of our friends, some of our current connections in the industry that would do that for us. And I think that would be a good way to kind of not go broke.
yeah.
Immediately. Things have changed a lot since I actively toured a lot. It's like gas used to be $2 a gallon, and I just got to LA where it was $7. So
Yeah.
like, the cost of doing business, the amount you earn today, it's so much less. It's so much harder. Attendance is waning at a lot of shows. And, it's a tough time out there for live music. There are some bands that are pushing the needle the other way. I mean, Bad Omens and Sleep Token are out there like selling out arenas and stuff like that. And at the same time, like you're seeing artists that had big hits on the radio decades ago, or even in the last few years, that can barely fill the same room. So, you know, the climate's changing a little bit. There are some bands I think that are really pushing through in a major way. But for a lot of other people, it's probably more difficult today than it ever has been.
Yeah, I'm seeing that as well. It's like I can't even. I used to like hit shows all the time. And like I said, Peabody's used to be like a second home. But you know, I'm trying to remember what was the last show I've been to. It's been a while. You know, it's just like, is it worth the price of not just all the extra charges on tickets, but then parking, and everybody's got to get theirs. And like you said, and gas these days, it's tough, man. Hopefully things turn around. I hope, but
I hope so. And you know what, if you're listening to this, watching this, I really hope you're getting out there and supporting touring musicians. You know, I got to see some old friends recently. The band Volumes puts on an incredible show. You know, they're dynamic and just almost flawless execution live. You know, I saw my old friends Electric Callboy. We toured Europe with them when they were Eskimo Callboy, and again, just massive production, just incredible live show. It is entertaining. It's fun. You know, if you're missing out on this kind of stuff, like, I highly recommend, you know, if you're a music lover, get out there, go watch these bands. You know, these people are traveling all around the world and putting, you know, at their expenses and doing so much to bring that experience to your backyard. And I think it's more important than ever for those of us who love music and want to see the bands that we love continue, is that you got to get out there and be at their shows.
Agree, man. Agree. And then before we get ready to wrap up, I want to ask you a couple questions that I normally ask my guests that I have on here. What class do you feel should be mandatory before graduating high school today?
Ooh, it's a good question. I think financial literacy. I think the fact that none of us know anything about like investments or balancing checking accounts or taxes, or, you know, things like that. Like, you know, it's kind of a strange thing that the government collects our taxes and then at the end of the day puts it on us to figure it out. And then it's like, if you screw it up, you're in trouble. Well, like, what is the point of the IRS then? You know, for one, I don't think we should even have to do our own taxes, but that's another story.
Yeah.
As long as we live in a world where we do, you know, education should you know, enable you to embrace the adult world. And honestly, like, there's probably a few classes I think we should add. You know, I think even things like home economics could really come back, because I don't think there's a lot of people out there that know how to cook anymore, you know, and like learning how to work your way around a kitchen might do a lot of us a lot of good. You know, I think Americans are more unhealthy than ever, and a lot of that is the fact that we're door dashing everything and eating fast food. You know,
Yep.
and I'm not here to bash on anyone's personal choices. I just think there's room for improvement and we could be better.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you know, well, first of all, the financial literacy and taxes, that's the number one answer that I always get when I ask that question. And like you said, it's almost like, you know, they teach you how to get in debt. They don't teach you how to, you know, manage and set yourself up for success. It's almost like it's by design. And then back to the, you know, the home ec stuff. It's just like, first of all, you know, yeah, if we got to cut some corners right now because things are too expensive, you know, to fill up the gas tank, you'd be saving money to learn. It do you good to learn how to cook for yourself, not just for health purposes, you know, to meal prep and stuff like that, but ordering out every day, you know, not, you know, it's a whole nother thing. It's just like they like us lazy and out of it and, you know, controllable, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, supply chain issues and whatever, maybe it's greed, maybe it's a lot of just, you know, inflation. But I mean, you're old enough to remember when we would go to, you know, a fast food restaurant, we'd spend $5 and have a tray full of food. And now it's like you spend, you know, $10 to $20, you know, now for that same thing. And it's less and less sustainable, and we're not getting the same, not healthy for us. And so, you know,
it's bioengineered garbage.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's like I feel like the quality of those things have even gotten worse and worse, and we're paying more and more for it. So again, I don't want to get preachy here, but I think I also think it'd be really important for us to emphasize trades again. I think that
Yeah.
failing in this country, and there's not enough people. There's not enough welders and electricians and plumbers and like home builders and pool builders and whatever. There's a lot of great trades that pay really well, and it doesn't look glorious, and they're not really, kids aren't exposed to them. They don't realize that they can make really good money,
Hmm.
own their own business and have that kind of freedom if they just looked into some of those trades. I think it would be really wise for schools to really set people up for that, because a lot of those trades don't necessarily require going to college. They require getting interested and then going in and interning or working in those fields, and then getting certified and things like that down the road. So I think exposure at a younger age to different career possibilities is also pretty important too, because otherwise you just walk out of school at like 18 and you're like, I know how to measure the, circumference of a circle, but I don't know how to fill out my
Yeah. Yeah. AI and robots can only do so much too, so,
I don't mind AI. I think it's, a natural evolution of things. And I think it's cool for people to be able to use it to increase their workflow and like do menial tasks. Where I get in a state of disagreement is I don't think that we need AI for creating art.
Yeah.
It's like AI is only going to take and amalgamate like what's already created by other people. And, there are so many graphic designers and artists and, musicians like myself who've dedicated our entire lives since we were 8 years old to learning, cultivating our ability to write music and do that. So, if some idiot can sit at home and type up a prompt, I want a hardcore song about my heart breaking, and then hit a button, and then 2 seconds later, they have a full song that would have taken me thousands of dollars and months of work to do. That just feels like the ultimate cop out. And I'm tired of hearing the same singer's voice over 25 different bands, Bleeding Verse and Formentis and all these other things that are popping off on social media. Every time I hear it, I immediately identify it as AI, and I'm just so tired of it. I'm tired of people sharing that stuff. I think AI has no business in art. Robots are not creative. They don't reach into the creative stream of consciousness. They don't create anything new or anything of value. It's like, yeah, it sounds appealing because they're taking all the things, it's science. It's just taking all the things they know you like and jamming it all together in a song. Of course it sounds appealing, but it's not real. There's nothing authentic about it. There's no actual emotion behind it. There's no, I don't think there's anything divine about creating something through a prompt versus like creating something because of like the muse or the source, the divine, whatever you may call it, that you sort of pull your creativity from. I think that is the only way that things should be created. That's just my preaching moment on the soapbox, but yeah, it's fine. I use it all the time to do funny things and make memes with my friends and stuff like that. That's fine. Quit putting stuff on Spotify that you hit with a prompt on Suno. That's not. There's already an oversaturation of music out there by people who are doing real music. So just stop.
Yeah, exactly. And then who are 3 people who've inspired you and you can credit for making you the person you are today?
I mean, first of all, definitely my mom. I know you got to give a shout out to Mom. It's almost Mother's Day too.
Yeah.
But she was just very patient when I was a strong-willed child and showed me unconditional love, and really, I think, probably saved me from becoming the darker sides of my nature. And I really think I would want to shout out to my friend Jason Matthews. We met in middle school, and he was probably the biggest influence as far as introducing me to new music. It kind of set me on that trajectory. Everything from like The Offspring to Rammstein and Korn and Limp Bizkit and like I mean, he introduced me to like all of those bands in the early 2000s, like late 90s. And I think that, you know, we ended up playing in a band together and everything like that. That got my excitement. I started as a bass player and a drummer, and I was always kind of singing clean parts and stuff and screaming backup parts from the drums or the bass. And, you know, I started as a drummer and I'd sing and I'd be in the back and I was like, man, I kind of wish I was just up at the front of the stage. Like, you know, I should probably learn another instrument. And I grew up playing guitar a little bit. So I ended up playing bass because I was like, it's easier for me to play bass. It's simpler for me to sing and play bass. And then eventually I was just like, I just want to sing. That's all I really want to do anymore. Like, as I developed my voice and developed more skill for it, I just realized I had so much more passion for that. And so I don't play a lot of instruments anymore, like other than for fun. But yeah, I've really grown to appreciate just being the singer. And that's kind of where I've been since like 2010. So pretty much committed to myself to singing like 16 years ago and I've stuck with it.
Gotcha.
No, that was only two, huh? I think I owe you one.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got long-winded and lost sight of the question. Gosh, who would my third influence be? Who I am today. I actually want to shout out my ex-wife, Julia Rose. Not necessarily for good things, though there was a lot of growth, there was a lot of good things, but her ghosting me and ripping my heart out and playing the victim really forced me to take a deep look at myself and go on like a personal healing journey. And also just a lot of inspiration, you know, that came from that relationship, whether it be good or bad. I think there was a lot of learning, a lot of growth that came during and after that relationship. And so, yeah, for what it's worth, I think that the good and the bad times of that relationship shaped me more than anything else in recent years. So, yeah, that'd be it. Mom, Jason, Julia.
Gotcha. And then I haven't got to ask this question in a while, but we started off talking about Roddy Piper and wrestling. Favorite pro wrestler?
Oh, you can't make me do that. You know, I mean, I want to say Hulk Hogan just because like the different phases were so fun. Like it was the early campy, like, you know, yellow Hulk Hogan, and then like the New World Order era with like the darker side of, you know, Hollywood Hulk Hogan. I also really liked Kane. I think it was like he kind of spoke to me on this unique level of like reminded me of like Brandon Lee and The Crow and everything, and that was like such an impactful movie. And he had that kind of like, you know, trench coat and like the makeup and everything like that. I'm a sucker for some of the old school guys though, you know. I like Undertaker, you know, stuff like that. I kind of started losing sight of them a little bit in the later eras as they got into like Stone Cold and beyond. I just recently started watching it a little bit more. But it's fun. I don't know. It's kind of nostalgic. And I think for me, it was more of a time and place thing as growing up as a kid, you know. That was just good fun. You know, everyone's like, it's fake. And we're like, no, it's not. You know, even if it is, I don't care. Now
Yeah.
behind the scenes to know it's all staged, but it doesn't make it any less entertaining.
Exactly. And like I said, it prepared me to look at politics in a whole new light. So have you checked out that Hulk Hogan documentary that just came out on Netflix?
I literally just added it to my list, I think last night or the night before. I haven't gotten to it yet, but that's high on my list. I'm going to watch that soon.
Yeah, I haven't finished it yet, but it is pretty good, you know, behind the scenes, a little bit of the rise and fall and the way things were, you know?
Yeah. It kind of, I watched a documentary a while back about like Ed McMahon and like, you know, from kind of telling some history of WWE and everything. And it was, it's pretty eye opening, you know, the sort of kind of crazy work environment that those people were going through back then. And it was kind of Wild West. It was really unchecked and like really, you know, I don't know, probably a dangerous and scary workplace, but God bless those guys for making amazing entertainment for us for all these years and putting their lives on the line. And
yeah,
The people like you who literally put your lives on the line.
Well, that's my next question. Any message you have for our military members currently serving overseas?
Oh, you guys have the hardest job of all. I think we can't show enough gratitude to the people that protect innocent people around the world. There's no doubt that there is, segments of society that are, I don't want to say evil, but just see things through an entirely different perspective. And there are some dark times in this world that I think have been prevented or minimized through the efforts of people like you and our service members across the globe. You're putting your physical life, your mental health, and so many things at risk, and really experiencing things that are very difficult to process. I have I didn't personally serve, but I have a few friends that are very close to me that did. And, what I really feel for too is like the mental toll, what it can do to you, the things you see, the things you go through. It is, I have the utmost respect for people, in the armed services around the globe. And, thanks to your sacrifices, we have these essential, amendments and Constitution that protects our rights and tries to protect the rights of people around the globe. And so I think I'm a firm believer, in free speech and the right to bear arms and everything else. I think we could probably do a lot better job at home actually enforcing those things within our own government. And I wish that was, but for those who are helping, protect the innocent, protecting children, protecting, the sovereignty of these nations, I just want to say thank you.
Awesome. Andrew, man, it's been great talking with you. What a great conversation. I know we set out for a half hour and we've gone over an hour now, but that's what happens. I
was nervous. Panel, I saw a lot of your podcasts do run about this long, and I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to sit here and talk about Remember the Monsters for that long, but it's been a great chat, and I appreciate you having me on.
No, man, I appreciate having you. It was a great conversation. Now, for any fans out there that are new hearing about Remember the Monsters and want to support you guys and see what's going on, where would you send them?
Social media is always safe, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. We're constantly trying to update you what's going on there. Of course, if you like the video content, there's always YouTube as well. As you mentioned, our music video for Infected is on there, and there's some shorts and teasers and stuff like that. Of course, you can find our music anywhere you find music, Spotify, Apple Music, and Deezer, and blah, 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 blah. It's all out there. I hope you guys check it out and continue to follow us because, every band says this, but the best is yet to come. We have been really honing in our sound, really finding our niche. And this LP1 that we just put out, War of Attrition, is sort of a way of us kind of wrapping up the past and preparing to move forward into a new era. And so I wouldn't expect a massive change, but there's definitely I think our songwriting's really dialed in now. And I think that the songs that are about to come out are probably some of the most emotional, some of the most impactful songs to me personally that I've ever written. Starting with what I think is going to be our next single called Drift. There's one teaser out there if you guys want to check it out on our TikTok and YouTube. And for me personally, it was probably the hardest song I've ever done, not physically because of this song, but that song almost broke me. That I'm not ashamed to admit, I cried a lot in the studio singing that song. It was still very fresh and it felt really real. So I'm excited for that one to get out there. I think it's going to really help a lot of people through tough times.
Awesome. Andrew, thanks again for your time, man. It was great talking with you. I hope some point our paths cross in real time.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it was really nice chatting with you. Thank you again for having me on.
Take care.
All right! Listen up! Hold on to your seats. Grab your girls, grab your beers.
Hey everybody, this is Charlie from Anthrax, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
This is Mark Metcalf, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio.
You are listening to today's Boondoggle with Bailey on Domain Cleveland Radio. Yes, Kato Kalin listens to this all the time.
Welcome to today's Boondoggle. Now, here's your host.
I am Monty Heath, so one Heath, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Hey, what's up? It's John from Skillet, and you are listening to today's Boondoggle on Domain Cleveland Radio.